Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Hi there, you're listening to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast, and I am your host, Macy. I'm so excited that you are joining in to listen to the podcast today. I've got a great episode for you, hopefully one that is going to land at the very time that you need it, and that is self-sabotage. Oh my goodness, let's talk about self-sabotage because we are human. And it's going to happen. The self-sabotaging happens, but we're going to talk about why it happens and how, to get over ourselves so that we're not constantly in the cycle. And I'm also going to share many examples of how it can show up because I think sometimes the more you can visualize all the little minute ways that it shows up, the better. So here is my biggest thing with self-sabotage. Okay, you all know that I've been coaching for 7 years. I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands of women at this point in all of my coaching between my own practice and working for my coach and her practice. And we often come against self-sabotage, I feel, when we are at the edge of a breakthrough or we are at the edge of a new level of ourself, the edge of growth. And we get this opportunity of if we're going to step off of this edge and let ourselves fly and succeed or even see what we're made of, or we pull ourselves back from the edge. And I ultimately feel like that self-sabotage is a lot of times being at the edge and seeing a little bit of what's available but it feeling like so scary to allow yourself to step off. And so we pull ourselves back. And it's very, very frustrating when it's like, can I just do it? I think of cliff diving or something. There's those accounts on Instagram. I'm not sure if you've ever seen them where they go cliff diving and they have like the parachute. And I just feel like when you walk to the edge, you are at the edge of a real breakthrough if you can just press through that discomfort, if you can just let yourself step off and trust, as opposed to like freaking out and walking backwards off of the edge. So I really want to talk about this and how it shows up in all the different examples, just so you can maybe catch different ways you're doing this that you might not be aware of. And ultimately, how do we stop doing this? How do we get past this edge so we can really see, everything that is available to us and for us in our life? So here's the thing with self-sabotage also. It's remembering that anytime you're in growth, it isn't going to always be calm and comfortable, okay? When you are at the edge of your growth, it's very emotional. It stretches you. It feels very risky. And because of that, our human makeup is to be made aware within the brain to sound ultimately an alarm, to say don't apply for that thing, don't speak up, don't move forward, you'll fail, you'll embarrass yourself, you'll prove that you're not enough. And that is what self-sabotage is. And it's not because you're weak, but because your brain wants that safety so badly. So when you are at the edge of your next level, you really only have two choices. You step backwards into familiar old patterns, into what I like to call a false sense of safety, or you step forward into growth, which is also into the unknown and into the version of you who's been waiting on the other side, okay? So sabotage is always going to be the loudest when your next level is the closest. Think about that. Think about the times when you self-sabotage the most. That self-sabotage is always going to be the loudest and the most like emotionally disruptive when you are at the edge of your next level, when you are so close and you're either going to step backwards into familiar old patterns or step forward into growth, into the unknown. So really think about that, okay? Now, I know that your brain wants to protect you because it feels like maybe staying where you are feels the safest. But the work here and why you're developing your emotional intelligence skills and why you're changing your mindset and why you're doing all of this hard work that a lot of people won't do is to be able to trust yourself enough to expand, to lean into the discomforts of life and know that they're there with purpose, okay? It doesn't always feel like they're there with purpose. It feels like they're a pain in the rear. But if you can just trust yourself to expand, I promise you it will be worth it. It is so much more worth it to feel the discomfort and step off of the edge than to backpedal where you've been. Because a lot of times where we've been is not even where we've actually been the most happy. It's where we've felt the most safe, but not where we have felt the most happy. Okay, so I want to give several examples of self-sabotage, and I'm going to do it broken down by different categories because I think, again, sometimes we have to see ourselves in these examples to really know all of the ways that self-sabotage shows up, because you can't change something that you do not see. So if I just name like an example here and there, I really feel like it's easy to get lost in all of the ways that we do this, not even on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, but sometimes a daily basis. And sometimes it's amongst like multiple categories. So that's why I really want to give you these examples. So in terms of career, when you're thinking career, this can look like staying quiet in meetings, even when you have ideas. Okay, you shut yourself up, you don't contribute what you have to offer, and then you feel overlooked. It can also be putting off applying for some sort of new role or promotion until the deadline passes, and then telling yourself a story of, well, it wasn't the right time anyways, or I wouldn't have gotten it anyways, or I'm not qualified, so I didn't even want to shoot my shot. Okay, it could also be downplaying any of your achievements in reviews so that you don't risk sounding full of yourself, because you don't want to, you don't want them to think that your ego is really, really big. So you make yourself smaller, and that oftentimes will rob you of extra opportunities, right? It may even make you sound less confident than you actually are because you're worried about how it will sound or how it will be perceived, okay? So those are some examples of career self-sabotage. Then here are the big ones. It's health, okay? This is probably one of the categories that I find my clients struggle with most, and that is any kind of health self-sabotage. And that might be like promising themselves that they will wake up early and they'll work out, and then they hit snooze until it's too late, and now they have to get up and go to work, and they're beating themselves up because they've self-sabotaged on their goal. It may also be like starting a new workout plan or meal plan with a lot of excitement, but then the very first time you slip, the very first time you allow yourself maybe to have some fun, eat some pizza, have some donuts, have a cookie, then you're telling yourself you've failed at the entire plan. So like what you actually have done is gotten into a process of perfectionism without balance. And now you are self-sabotaging by thinking you can't just get back on the plan, that suddenly you have ruined your life by the cookie, by the donut, by the pizza, by having some flexibility, by balance being in your life. It's like if you don't do it with perfection, 100% of the time, you might as well give up. That is totally self-sabotage. That is actually what took me out of the best health of my life. Back in 2013 to about maybe almost 2015, I was like my healthiest. Now, granted, I was in my 20s, my young 20s, but I was so disciplined. Like I went to the gym 5-6 days a week. I worked out. I ate really, really well. But the problem is I did not have balance. I didn't know how to manage myself if I missed several days. And I also didn't know how to allow balance of like letting myself have treats and eat things that, normally I wouldn't without feeling like it was all or nothing. So even an all or nothing mentality, like I'm either all good or I'm going to eat all the cake, right? I either work out all the time and I'm so healthy and so clean, or if I let myself slip once, then everything goes to hell in a handbasket. If that's your thinking as well, that's the self-sabotaging behavior. And that's ultimately that thinking and behavior is actually what took me out of being my most healthy back in the day, because as soon as I wasn't able to drink like my, gallon of water a day, because I used to do that. And as soon as I wasn't able to work out as many days of the week, and as soon as I wasn't able to, say no to the cookie the same way, then it was like, well, I've ruined everything. And then I just let it all go. And getting back on track after you have self-sabotage is like a whole nother level of work. Another example with health is, maybe like snacking late at night because it feels comfortable. It's like a passy, even though you promised yourself you wouldn't. So you made this goal that like you can have snacks, but you don't want to be eating snacks in bed at night, because you know that it's self-sabotage. But even though you've said that to yourself, you find yourself eating the cookies, right? That is self-sabotage as well. Okay. Now let's talk romantically, because this also shows up for many clients. This could be that you pick a fight after you've had an amazing date or an amazing evening, and that is because closeness feels so scary, right? The thing about romantic relationships is that it requires so much honesty and vulnerability. Like, if you are going to be all in and you are really going to allow yourself to feel what is real, you have to put your heart on the line to experience the full depth of what the relationship can be. And that feels so scary because if you've ever been hurt in the past, if you've ever had a bad experience in the past, if someone has betrayed your trust, it really feels safer to lock your heart in a cage and temporarily open it for closeness and then close it back up. But you never actually experience the full depth of that relationship if you have your heart in a cage. Okay. And so what a lot of women do is as soon as they feel that full level of vulnerability, they will start self-sabotaging in the relationship. It may also look like avoiding telling your partner what you really need, and then quietly resenting them for not knowing. How many of us expect our partners to be a mind reader? I know I've also been stuck here. It's like, they should just know. I shouldn't even have to teach him how to do this thing or how to know this thing. And then it's quiet resentment because I'm not speaking up about it. But that is self-sabotage even in a relationship, okay? You have to be able to speak up. Again, heart on the line without the cage. So hard to do because we don't like feeling yucky feelings. We do not like it. Another example in romantic relationships can be just shutting down or going silent every single time there's a conflict, even when you really want resolution. That is self-sabotage, my friend, because how is the relationship going to get better, or how are you actually going to work on what you need to work on if you are going silent and shutting down? And this is another thing that I have to remind myself of, because I tend to shut down. Like whenever I get really, really frustrated or really defeated, I totally just get quiet and then I'm internalizing everything. And we know the problem with internalizing is a lot of times your brain makes up stories and creates narratives that are not necessarily true. And you're not addressing those, stories or narratives or assumptions with your person. And so then a lot of times you're just angry over things you don't need to even be angry about, right? So we do a lot of self-sabotaging sometimes in our romantic relationships. So just keep in mind, if you're doing any of that, it's another form of self-sabotage. All right, let's talk about friendships, because I feel like it's really hard to maintain friendships in adulthood or have friendships in adulthood. That's something that comes up for a lot of the women that I work with. And let's talk about this. So it could look like canceling plans last minute And it's because maybe you get anxious or you feel like you don't want to be around, your friend group socially, but then you also feel guilty and disconnected. Okay. So it's like, where do you remove yourself from interactions because you're nervous? I think, what has made me giggle is, I've done 5 women's retreats at this point. And every single round where I have done a women's retreat, there's always been at least one, if not multiple women that say to me, I almost didn't come. And I'm like, why? And they're like, I just was really worried about like just interacting, conversations, how hard it was going to be, like all of the things. I just worried. And they almost robbed themselves of those opportunities because, self-sabotage. It can also be pulling away from a friend. There's multiple reasons we may pull away from a friend or friends, but sometimes it's because maybe you're watching that friend thrive or you're watching the success of that friend and you start internalizing that you feel behind. So you will pull away from that friend rather than stay in proximity and learn from them or grow from them. That's another thing that happens. So I've seen this as well. If someone feels like everybody around them is in a different space, they will self-sabotage and maybe like emotionally react to things or pull themselves away because they don't feel they are worthy or they don't feel like they belong. And another way that this happens in friendships are keeping everything surface level, like never really going into depth so that you don't risk being judged or you don't risk people potentially wanting to pull away. Like you don't want to risk rejection. So again, it's the heart in the cage kind of situation. But remember, if you don't allow your heart to be outside of the cage and you don't allow people to really get to know you on a deep level, then that other person may pull away because they don't feel like there's depth. They can't read you. They don't feel like there's anything beyond surface level. It feels really hard to get in. And that act of just keeping your heart caged up so that you don't have to feel hard emotions in building the relationship can also be a form of self-sabotage. So just watch whenever you're doing that, okay? Let your friends see you. Let your friends get to know you. Let them see the messy. The people that want to be in your life can hold the space for it. The people who don't won't, So you have to decide that. I feel like the more people build their emotional intelligence skills, the more messiness they can hold. But remember that everybody does have boundaries as well. So again, full friendship and being able to have depth in relationships, really healthy ones, you have to make sure you're not internally self-sabotaging because it will absolutely break apart bonds and connections. If you're creating narratives, if you're making up stories in your mind, if you're pulling away because you don't feel worthy or you feel like it feels too scary, you're not willing to feel all the emotions associated with close relationships, then whether it's romantic or friendship, you're going to find that it's really hard to stay connected to people. Okay. Another example of, or I should say more examples of how we can self-sabotage. It could be like maybe keeping yourself out of an opportunity because you feel unqualified. So think about that. You're presented with an opportunity, and instead of your brain going into problem solving or letting yourself have that awesome opportunity, you just allow your brain to tell you that you're unqualified or it'll be too hard or it's not figure outable or whatever it may be, and you rob yourself from it. Another thing, this could be for business owners, entrepreneurs, like waiting to share something with the world until it feels absolutely perfect. And then it never happens. Like you never get it out in the world. So maybe like you want to write a book or you want to launch this business or company or podcast or something, but you're so hung up on it being perfect that you just stall. And you self-sabotage. You never meet the deadline. You never get your work out into the world. Like ideas stay in your brain. That's another way that we can self-sabotage. All right, self-care. because we know that women sometimes struggle with self-care, but there's also self-sabotage in self-care. And that can be that you declare you're going to have a self-care night. You're going to take care of yourself. It's going to be your time. And then you end up filling all of that time with chores or tasks that can be done later instead of resting, instead of actually self-caring. Now, I know some of you are going to think in your mind, well, cleaning up and having the free time to get my space in order is self-care. And if that is absolutely true for you, wonderful. Sometimes that is true for me. I have to say that I am a product of my environment. If my environment feels chaotic and messy, I cannot rest. So I am not going to combat that with you because I'm very much there. But if you are like, this is my day, my time, and then you're ultimately like doing everything for everybody else still, and you're not actually honoring your time for you, that is a form of self-sabotage. If you feel guilty for sitting down, so you keep going and going like the Energizer bunny until you're exhausted and resentful, that is self-sabotage. You cannot work on an empty tank of gas. Okay, so what I see a lot of women doing is that their tank is empty and they're like, well, I have to keep going. I still have to keep going. I have too many roles and responsibilities. And that is true. Yes, you do have lots of roles and lots of responsibilities, especially as a woman. However, you cannot give that of what you do not have. You are not going to be your best self as a wife or a partner or a mother or a caretaker or an employee or a businesswoman if your tank of gas is not there, okay? So the guilt and the shame for sitting down and doing what you need to do to take care of you, you've got to stop it, okay? You have to take care of yourself. And then also, another form of self-sabotage is like spending money or buying things that you do not absolutely need or that you're not going to use. Or even it can even be like courses, books, things that you purchase where you have great intent, but then you don't actually follow through on finishing them, listening to them, completing the course, using your calls, right? Or if you buy a package of something. So it's like if you buy a package of something at, let's say, a studio, like a workout studio, or you buy a package of coaching, or you buy like anything, if you are not utilizing it and getting everything that you came for, you are in self-sabotage. So you need to ask yourself, what is that about? Why am I doing that? Okay. Family. Let's talk family self-sabotage. It could be saying yes to things, hosting, helping, whatever it may be, when you are already depleted. Again, if your tank of gas is empty, but you're saying yes, you need to ask yourself why, because that's a form of self-sabotage. Like, you know better because you don't feel like you have the energy. In certain situations, yeah, you might boss up and be like, you know what, I don't have the energy, but I'm going to do this to help this person out. But if you're constantly in this cycle, you need to reevaluate. It can also be snapping at your kids or your parents when you're really upset with yourself for not setting boundaries. If you don't set boundaries, that is a form of your own self-sabotage. So then if you're getting upset and you're now emotionally lashing out at people who don't really deserve it because you're not emotionally regulating yourself, that's a form of self-sabotage, okay? Because now you're cutting into your relationships with your people, whether you have strong relationships with them or not, you're really creating a lot of tension in relationships where there doesn't actually have to be if you just set boundaries to begin with. And then also downplaying any of your dreams, goals, aspirations around your family because you fear judgment, right? Staying really small, keeping your light really dim. It's not to say that you have to share every single amazing thing you're doing or want to do with your family, but you also don't have to shrink yourself. I remember, and for me, it wasn't even so much with family, but I do remember there being a period of time where I felt like I really did have to shrink and downplay myself around people, different friend groups and things, because I just didn't want anybody else feeling bad. And I didn't want anybody to feel like I was bragging or anything like that, because at the end of the day, and I was just telling my coaching group this last night, It's that, in the Equip society, that we are very tribal. We want to fit in. We want to be safe from any sort of exile, social exile. And because of that, oftentimes it may really impact what we're willing to lean into when it comes to that edge. So for me, I didn't even want to have my accomplishments acknowledged by anybody else or anybody to celebrate me in front of friends, because I didn't want them to feel a type of way and exile me or be like, oh, Macy always blah, blah, blah. It was like too painful. And then I realized like this is self-sabotage, because I don't even allow myself to really be me. I don't even allow myself to celebrate. And the real people that want to be in our life will be able to hold space for it, like really, truly, and without any kind of like jealousy or yuckiness. Okay. Like they might have awareness that, your accomplishments bring something out in them that they want for themselves, but they, ideally your best people are going to be able to really hold and celebrate you. And one of the last ways that we kind of, self-sabotage is just by stories in our mind, creating a narrative. And remember, creating narratives and stories are sentences in our brain that, we say, and we say it like the news, as my coach used to always say, like where it feels true. And we self-sabotage. And so it could be stories like, well, they didn't reply to me because they don't like me. Okay. Seriously, assuming, again, making up stories. Well, it can also be, this won't work out anyways, so why even try? Or I'm too much, so then you shrink yourself. Okay, we come up with some pretty intense stories, especially when emotions are high, intelligence goes low. And those stories in our mind can really self-sabotage a lot of things in our life. So just be mindful when that is happening. So let's talk about, again, why do you arrive here? It is because I really feel, after working with so many women, that you are on the edge of a breakthrough. When you come up against this kind of, challenge with self-sabotage, like you are at the door, knocking on the door of your next level self. And I imagine it visually as like your highest self, your best self concept opens the door and says, come on in. But you can't see what's on the other side of the door. Okay? You can't see everything that you actually want on the other side of the door. You just see like this highest self version of you and welcoming you into what feels like a blank canvas. And what you have also is the comfort of standing at the side where every piece of your life has already been painted and is comfortable. You know where everything is, you know what you have, you know what you've lost, like you know everything that you have kind of signed up for throughout your life. Of course, it feels much easier to stay back and to be like, you know what, this little room that I've been in, that I've created over the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, it's fine. It's comfortable. It's all good. And because of that, we may choose to never step inside the door of what's possible. But we forget, you guys, that in that door that we step through, we get to paint and create and choose how we want things over there as well. And I feel like if you can visualize this, that you remember that blank canvas, though scary, gets to be created into whatever you want. Anything that didn't work in the current life, you get to change when you walk through that door. Anything that worked, that you love about your current life, you get to take with you through that door. Okay? You're not crossing that threshold to burn your current life down. You're taking what worked or what works with you, and anything that you didn't like, that felt heavy, that felt yuck, that created a lot of negativity or created poor outcomes, you get to leave at that little room that you've been creating for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And you get another opportunity to create and paint and design and bring in whatever you want for the life you really, really, really want and also deserve. Okay? So I want to go into some of the best ways that you can catch and change and overcome self-sabotage in the moment, okay? Number one, you have to be able to name it, to catch it, and to say it out loud. The second that you are able to catch yourself procrastinating, shrinking, spinning, making up stories, whatever it may be, you need to be able to say to yourself, this is self-sabotage. My brain thinks it is protecting me. I want to repeat that. This is self-sabotage. My brain thinks it is protecting me. Remember that the brain seeks pleasure over discomfort. Okay. I'm in this situation right now with this podcast. This podcast is going to release, yes, but it's technically releasing late because yesterday, after I did everything that I needed to do for the mini program that is getting ready to start on October 14th, I was packing up all of their materials and it's going to be like very hands-on. So it took a lot out of me to do everything that I needed to do yesterday. And I knew that I needed to record a podcast, but it just like my brain just kept saying like, oh, I'm just so tired. I don't feel like it'll be the best episode. I don't feel like I have the energy. I know it's due today, blah, blah, right? And what I really, really had to have, like I had to have the come to Jesus moment, especially today when it's already late, to go, okay, you're self-sabotaging, okay? It doesn't matter if people don't care if it's late. It doesn't matter if no one is going to listen. This behavior, like your brain is trying to protect you from the discomfort of just doing it. And your brain is also now trying to self-sabotage by saying, well, just wait till next week. It's already a day late. Okay. The difference of me staying back in the little room that I've created for myself for 33 years, almost 34, is, it's that moment. It's my highest self, my best self concept saying, when you think of your best self, what do you do in this situation? Well, I cross the threshold, I come up against my edge, and I walk through the door and I record the episode because in the long run, that is who I want to be. I just want to be the person that follows through. And when I mess up and when my humanness kicks in, I don't want it to then create a cycle where now it's like, well, I'll just wait, or I'll just start Monday, or I'll just do it next time, or I'm a bad person because I didn't follow through, or there's another late podcast. Like that is not serving me. That is not helpful. So you have to be able to call yourself out. And that's what I did. I called myself out today. It's the next day, but I called myself out and I'm like, no more. What the actual F? No more. We're not doing this. This is sabotage. Your brain thinks that it is protecting you. Okay. So my brain thinks it's protecting me and it is not. It's keeping me in this tiny little room of self-sabotage. And I'm done. I don't want it anymore. Okay. So I'm willing to come up against my edges. You have to be willing to come up against your edges as well, if you want to get out of the self-sabotaging, that is. Okay, so the second thing, you want to always anchor back to your highest self or your future self or your best self-concept, as I like to refer to it as your self-concept. And that is by asking yourself the question of like, what would the version of me that I'm working to become or that I am becoming, what would that version of me do right now? So same thing with me in this podcast, right? My best self, what would she do? Okay. I can tell you what like current Macy wanted to do. Current Macy was like, let's just lay on the couch. We've got, a couple coaching calls today. We'll do those. Like, I kind of want to run to Home Goods. We need new pillows. Like that is what my brain told me. Okay. And then it was like, no, get your head out of your rear. You have a self-concept you're working to become. There's going to likely be a day where also you're going to have little rugrats running around. You're not going to have the luxury of time that you have right now. You need to be productive with your time and create a discipline now, because when you don't have a ton of time, you're still going to have deadlines. You're still going to have things that you want to be done, especially if you want a thriving business. So pull your head out of your booty and get to work. Okay. That's what we have to do. We have to anchor into our best self-concept. Every time I am getting ready to self-sabotage, I have to remind myself of that, okay? I have to remind myself of the self-concept that I want to have. And then the third thing, okay, do the smallest brave action, or the smallest, what feels like the most mundane, or the smallest, what feels like the most micro action. You don't have to do it all, whatever it is, but you do just make one little move at a time. When we're building our self-concept, it's one little micro move at a time. A lot of times my clients get into this journey and they think that they have to change everything all at once, that they should just know everything all at once. They should know how to change every single part of their life within 3 months, within 6 months, within a year, within 2 years, whatever. This is a lifelong journey. You just decide how often you want help, how often you want acceleration. I always say, like, when we have someone in our corner, we are accelerating our journey, okay? Because there are, like, we learn lessons faster. Like, my lessons are learned 10 times faster when I have someone in my life that is calling me on my BS, when I have someone who is holding me accountable. When, it's less time. It's like time cut in half for making the same mistake. Instead of, self-sabotaging maybe for an entire year, I might self-sabotage for a week or less because I have someone on my tail about it. So you want to make sure you are taking those micro actions. Send the freaking email, open the document, make the phone call, say the hard sentence out loud. Action steps. Action is what teaches your brain that you can handle it. You're not going to die. It's okay. And every single time you follow through, that is a deposit you're making in your own self-trust, like being able to actually trust yourself. So remember that self-sabotage is not ever who you are unless you allow it to be. Any of these examples you could see yourself in, be sure that you don't make it an identity. Be sure that, you just see it as what it is. It is your brain's outdated way of protecting you. That's it. Okay, that is it. It's just a pattern of protection. You get to interrupt that pattern of protection by knowing, even if you stop self-sabotaging and it feels uncomfortable, that you're going to be okay. In fact, you are opening up the door for a better, brighter future, the future you want to create every single time you stop this behavior. You have to be willing to stop shrinking at the edge of your own potential and lead yourself forward. It's not going to look perfect, but it is going to be more powerful, okay? So I really hope that this episode helps you if you are currently self-sabotaging in any way. Remember that it's going to happen. You're human. And your brain is wired for cozy, comfort. It wants pleasure over any kind of what it considers pain. It wants to feel good all the time. So you're going to be challenged every single time your brain does not feel good. And when your brain does not feel good and you start to emotionally want to lash out or emotionally self-sabotage, you are either taking steps forward towards the future you want, or you are setting yourself back. The goal with this work is to feel those high intensity emotions and not set yourself back, to instead lean into the work you're being invited to more and more and more. Okay? If you're willing to do that, there's nothing you cannot do, as long as you don't shrink and as long as you don't back away from the edge. Okay? All right. I hope that this episode was a great one for you, and I will see you guys next week. Bye. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at macyrenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at macyrenee.com anytime you want, so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.